Like I've seen those memes where like you like stop working with someone, you feel like you've broken up with them and you're just like, this is weird. Like we used to talk like 10 times a day every day. Now I don't talk to you. Like, can I come over? Like,
I feel like that is really a hard part of what we do. And I definitely felt that at times. Oftentimes I feel like, oh my God, what just happened by the end of it?
Yeah. And you do have to like learn some boundaries and some distancing there
100%.
where you can still be empathetic and like be on their side and be on their team. But not necessarily take that all home with you at the same time, right? Because it can be too much.
Separate it, right?
For sure.
I'm Cynthia Ostos, team leader and broker at eXp Realty here in the Greater Toronto Area. Welcome to Beyond the Sale, a real estate podcast where we discuss everything beyond the sale. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Sale. I am super excited to have my next guest on. She is top 35 under 35 from Royal LePage. Top 3% Royal LePage 2017, 2018, 2020, and top tier for 5 years from 2015 to 2020. Kathryn Hennessey, welcome and thank you for coming on today. I'm super excited to have you here. How does it feel to hear me say all of these amazing accolades and, they're incredible, like to have all of these accomplishments. How does it feel for you to hear me say those?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, first of all. And it obviously, it feels great to, to see sort of, some of the things that you've accomplished. But I think really when it boils down to it, the only people who care about that stuff are like realtors, right? Like you and me and other realtors. I don't even know if the general public, honestly, even like pays attention to things like that for the most part. I think, I don't know, in your experience, have your clients ever been like, oh, like how many transactions did you do last year? Like no one's ever really asked me that. So most times it's just, I think, how you like make them feel. So, it feels good to hear that, but I try not to focus on it too much.
Well, and I don't really know what top tier means with Royal LePage. Maybe you can explain, like, is it?
Sure. It's just if you've reached a certain threshold for a certain number of consecutive years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Because some realtors, especially those that started during COVID, and you know who you are, they may have had an amazing few years, but to do it year after year after year, that's where the challenge comes in, right? I know my first year, I think I did about 20 transactions or so. And I remember a coach at that time saying like, yeah, you're going to be a rock star. And I was
20
kind of
for
like,
your first year is unbelievable.
It may have included some leases for sure. But I remember thinking like, really? Like, I'm doing well, I guess. How long have you been in real estate? And you and I met through real estate, truthfully.
Yeah, we did. So coming up, it will be my 14th year. So 2025 will be 14 years, which is like wild when you think about it, because it doesn't feel like that long.
So was it you started in 2011?
Yeah.
Okay. I started kind of tail end of, we're pretty much the same.
Yeah. So it's, like I said, doesn't feel like that long when you think about it, but
really
yeah.
for me it feels like a long time. So many transactions, right? Like I was thinking to myself, if someone were to ask me what was the most interesting or complex transaction, like there's just been so many, I couldn't even pick one. Like, do you feel the same? Or
I think if you've been doing it for long enough, you've seen your fair share of in the trenches type moments, right? But I always say that I'm never surprised, right? Something happens and I'm like, I'm just never surprised. Like there's always going to be a new situation, a new challenge to sort of navigate. And so I think in this job, that is one of the nice things, is that, there's always something different and a new challenge to sort of work your way through, I guess. But
sure.
yeah, in this much time in business, you've seen your fair share of
there's never
things.
A boring day in real estate, that's for sure.
Yeah, I could use some more boring days. I like boring days. Boring days are good.
Especially in our market, because there's so many ups and downs. But I'm dying to know, how did you actually get into real estate? Like some people say, oh, I fell into it. I believe you were in Queens. That's where you went to school.
Yeah. I was studying something that has literally nothing to do with real estate.
What was that?
It's called physical geography. It's like basically like earth science, more or less.
Okay, that's something to do with the earth, real estate, homes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was more like.
Is it like urban planning or more like?
No, it was more like in my fourth year, yeah, honestly.
What does that course description sound like?
Yeah,
you can't even describe it.
It's just interesting because like in my fourth year, it was more like climatology, and like one of the profs I was working with, like he worked on like climate models, but like on a very small scale. So
Wow.
they use that and they sort of like try to extrapolate it into like larger climate models. So had I stuck with that, it probably would have been a little bit more of a noble job considering, global warming and all the stuff that we're faced with right now. But yeah, when I was done school, I was sort of done. Like I didn't really want to stay in academics. And at the time it was a recession. And so a girlfriend of mine, a really good friend of mine, worked at the Bank of Montreal. So she's like, come work for the bank. So I started in the mortgage. I worked there and then moved to the mortgage department. So
Like here in Toronto, in the GTA?
In Toronto, yeah. It was downtown Toronto. And so that's sort of what opened my eyes to like the world of real estate because I hadn't really thought much about it at all before that. So I was doing mortgage renewals and talking about real estate every day. And so I wanted, I was looking for what type of career might suit sort of my strengths and what I felt was, qualities that I was good at and I could apply myself with. And the things I liked about real estate was that, it was really just up to you, right? Like you're an entrepreneur. If you're a self-starter, if you're a hard worker, if you sort of put your nose to the grindstone, you can kind of flourish in a career like this. And so that's sort of what introduced me to it and made me sort of take the jump. And here we are.
So did you have any like mentors when you started? Like I'm always trying to find out, we were talking off camera, like what makes you different? Because, success in real estate is not common. Not like there's a huge failure rate, as I'm sure you know.
There is. Yeah.
So how did you kind of start out in the business? Like, was there a mentor? Like, how did you achieve this insane success that you've had?
Yeah, absolutely. At the office I was at, there was a lot. I will say that like the culture at the office was very, very warm and welcoming. And a lot of the senior agents there would, be very happy to sort of share their tips and take you under their wing and things like that. So I had a lot of people I could go to with questions and sort of model like, how do I do this? How do I do that? So I would just say that there was really a culture of people willing to help,
Sharing.
Right? Yeah. And I've tried to sort of keep that in mind as time goes by, when there's newer people coming in, if they have, like, making sure that I have time for them and in terms of answering questions or helping it where I can, because it was instrumental in because when you start, you don't know your left hand from your right. And
yes.
You could take all the courses in the world, but like as we were just saying, every real life experience is so different. And even 14 years later, you're experiencing things you haven't come across yet. So having people you can go to is really, really helpful. And then I would just say, tenacity, I suppose. For the first couple of years, I wasn't rich in business, but I was rich in time. And so I just put like every single free moment I had towards my business. I do 12, 14-hour days and just
so what would you
grind and hustle.
So 12, 14 hours, but what did those hours look like? What were you
at the
doing?
beginning? I mean, keep in mind, like social media was different back then. There wasn't Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Like it just, so just connecting, like first and foremost, I was very much Buffini hardcore. I was just really trying to connect with
Buffini's like the referral.
Connecting with like your database and your sphere of influence.
So you started to build a database early on?
Yeah. So I just reached out to literally like anyone I ever knew.
And what would you say to them?
I'm not like a salesy person. And I don't like when people hard sell me. So I never really liked that approach. I would just sort of be like, hey, this is what I'm doing now. Like, if you ever have any questions, I'm really happy to like talk to you about it. And just sort of just let people know that this is what I'm doing. Cause I think someone said to me one time that you can't be a secret agent, right?
100%.
Like, people
That's
need
a
to,
big one.
Yeah.
Can't be a secret agent.
No, people need to know like this is what you're doing. And so I was hopefully just trying to do it in a way that was authentic to me and not like a very super hard sales, because that's just not really my vibe.
Do you remember where your first deal came from? I remember mine.
Yeah. Oh,
What
yeah.
about you?
No, I remember for sure. It was a friend. Yeah.
Okay, Sphere.
Yeah, a friend. All of my, like, I'm literally indebted for the rest of my life to my friends and the people I grew up with. They were so good to me.
Really? Wow. That's incredible, because usually your Sphere is sort of hard to convert at the beginning of a real estate career.
It can be, for sure. And people are weird, right? Because just because you have a personal relationship with someone, they don't necessarily want you to know about their finances or like, be involved in a significant purchase like
and
that.
if you're new, they're like, do you even know what you're doing?
Exactly.
Right?
I was so young too, right? Like I didn't own a home when I started real estate, right? So my age too was a factor. It was really hard at the very beginning to get sort of buy-ins from my friends' parents, but my friends knew me as a person. They knew my work ethic. They knew, who I was, my sort of qualities about me. And so I'm just honestly and internally grateful for them giving me a chance at the very beginning. And it sort of just spiraled from there. I grew up in Mississauga. I know a lot of people in the neighborhood I grew up in, and then just
And what neighborhood was that?
Applewood Acres, in Mississauga. So
you didn't come from like any family real estate business or anything like that. You sort of started just like on your own and building out. Did you farm a neighborhood? Or?
I eventually did get to farming, a few years in. I really wanted to build up sort of like a secure book of my own business first. And then my age too, like honest to God, my age was a factor when I started because, you're so young and you're like knocking on people's doors and they're like, what do you know about real estate,
like, you
right?
were in your 20s?
Yeah, I was 25 when I started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't want to,
Yeah.
Some women don't want to share how old they are, but
okay.
yes. Okay. Mid-20s.
Yeah.
That's not super young. Like I hear people that start at like 19, like 18. I mean, I feel like, and if they look like a baby, then it's even harder, but maybe you did look like, you still look like a baby.
Yeah. I felt like I did look like a baby then. But yeah, I mean, anytime you get carded, I'm like, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Just made my day. And it was just like over time, it just sort of developed. And I've always sort of just been of the mindset, like, I just try to put myself always in my client's shoes. And like, I probably am like the worst person to work for because I'm like very demanding and I have high expectations for everyone. So I always try to hold that same level of expectation that I would hold myself accountable to for my clients. If I was in their shoes,
they don't have to worry because you're the one that will set the bar really high.
Yeah, for myself, I'm very for better or for worse. I have a lot of like perfectionism tendencies, and in like your personal life, sometimes not so great.
I can relate.
Yeah, but from when it comes to like a work perspective, those qualities can actually be helpful for your clients. If you're tenacious and determined and want things a certain way, you want to achieve a certain result for your clients, and if you have that kind of drive, then I think it can bode well for your clients. And
what sort of things are you a perfectionist about? I'm curious.
Oh boy.
Like name a few.
I like things just being done like the right way. Like I think there's again, better or worse, there's a way that I think things should be done. And just meticulous. Like I think that there is so many, it's such an important decision and there's so many factors that go into it. And there's so many extra things as realtors we can do to protect our clients that pretty much nobody does, right?
Yes.
And so for me, I'm always like, well, if I was in their shoes, like, what should I be checking this? Should I be checking that? Like, I almost like overcheck everything. I'm like, I need to know everything about a situation before I can make a decision type of person. Mm-hmm. So whether that's important to my client or not, I just sleep better knowing that I've like checked all the boxes and there's no stone left unturned. Like nobody wants a surprise. So I just try to 100%. Be as proactive about mitigating those surprises as possible.
Yeah. I feel like we have a lot in common. Like everything you just said, I'm like, yep. Like I'm thinking the way my mind works is like, I'm thinking steps ahead before the client even knows that there's like a fire going on, right? I'm already looking for that solution.
100%. Because I mean, at the end of the day, like you're their eyes and their ears and like, they don't know what they need to know. So like that's our job is to like, these are the things you don't know you need to know. And that's what I'm supposed to be here for.
There's so much that the public doesn't understand about real estate, and I feel like that's why we're where we are all these years later, because we always put the client first and we're thinking 10 steps ahead, right?
Absolutely. And I think that I endeavor for my clients to feel that I am with them every step of the way, that like, when we start working together, we're forming this partnership, right? So like we're in it together, right? Yeah. Like this isn't like, I'm not just doing this for you and see you later. Like,
it's a big deal.
It's a big deal. We're in it together. And in it, like, there's obviously like the, the component of competency. Like there's certain things that we just need to know, but then there's also sort of like the more softer emotional side of things where it's like, this is such an integral decision for people. And, you form that like French, like it's like, I've seen those memes where like you like stop working with someone, you feel like you've broken up with them and you're just like, this is weird. Like we used to talk like 10 times a day every day. And now I don't talk to you. Like, can I come over? Like,
I feel like that is really a hard part of what we do. And I definitely felt that at times. And then now I think I'm just used to it, that it ends. And then you sort of like, you see them when you see them, you try and keep in touch as much as you can. But as you scale a business, right, like it is hard to give like that much attention to every single client, right? Like when we do client events, like oftentimes I feel like, oh my God, what just happened by the end of it? Because you really can't spend like quality time with every person, but you want to.
Yeah, it's true. And at the beginning too, and I don't know if you ever found this one at the beginning, but like, especially the first couple of years, like you're so invested into like the outcomes as well. And so you get so emotionally attached to the outcome and then also their emotions, right? And it can be draining, right? It can be very, very draining on you to like take on that because it's not really your feelings, it's their feelings, but you're sort of absorbing that. And you do have to like learn some boundaries and some distancing there where you can still be empathetic and like be on their side and be on their team, but not necessarily take that all home with you at the same time, right? Because it can be too much.
Separate it, right?
For sure, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's intense for sure. And so in terms of your business, like you mentioned, 12, 14-hour days. That sounds very similar to what I experienced. So would you be like doing a lot of door knocking? Were you like
in the beginning? Like I tried to sort of find the activities that I felt comfortable doing because I never excel at something that I'm not doing authentically, right?
I love that.
And I've tried all the things.
So what are the things you excel at then, would you say?
I would just say that like, more just like one-to-one relationships, like building it that way. And, I would do, same like door knocking. Like I don't enjoy doing it, but I'd always walk away being like, I should do that more often, right? And so at the beginning, I think there was no stone left unturned. I was willing to try pretty much anything. I never did cold calling really though, because that really did not feel authentic to me. That's pretty much the only thing I would say that was like a hard no. And then like cold leads, like online leads, stuff like that, I would never really do. So most of my business is still completely like referral, word of mouth. I do farm an area, so there is, some business that comes in that way that isn't necessarily from my sphere, but I would say the bulk of my business is repeat business and word of mouth.
Amazing. And for people that don't know what farming is, it's basically real estate agents choosing an area to work in and farming or planting seeds through different ways like mailers, phone calls.
Yeah.
Do you have like a company that's doing that for you?
I do. Like, yeah. I have a company that handles that.
And is it Applewood?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, it
Amazing.
is. So for me, it was a really easy pick because it's not just a community that I know very, very well. I like have like very, very fond memories of growing up there. There's so many people who are still in the community that, it's so nice to see, and so many people that, my folks were friends with. So for me, it's a really feel good place to work as well. So I feel very fortunate that I get sort of to farm in an area that is so near and dear to my heart.
Amazing. And we haven't even touched on you being a mom, which I think is a big part of your life now. How many kids do you have? Tell us a little bit about them. Yeah,
I have 3 kids. I have a 4.5-year-old and then 2.5-year-old twins. They're 4.5 and 2.5, and I have 2 girls and a boy. And like what a game changer, right? Because like going back to the 14-hour days, those really can't happen anymore when you have kids, right?
Yeah.
So,
how did you find that transition? Because for me, I found it very difficult because I was pretty much a workaholic before I had my first. And I'm curious how you sort of felt that transition.
I feel like we're probably very much aligned in our experiences because it was very, very challenging. And when we were talking the other day, you and I joked how like real estate was our first baby.
Yes.
You like take this little thing, you grow it from like nothing up to something, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into it. And then when you decide to have
a real one.
Yeah, a real baby. Like the transition was significant, right? Because there was a concern, like for us, my partner and I, when we decided to have a family, it was very important for us, for me to stay home for with the kids for that year, after they were born. And that was very scary for me because I had invested so much into growing my business, and I was about a decade in at that point. So I was afraid. Like, I was really coming from a place of fear where I was really worried that everything would be sort of thrown by the wayside if I didn't. But at the same token, like, have that component of staying home was so integral for what we felt was going to work for our family. And in hindsight, it worked beautifully, and it really introduced me to the concept of leverage, because I did hire a trusted colleague to sort of manage my business for that year, and I had a great year.
Wow.
And so it was really ended up being a positive experience overall from like a business perspective, from that to be eye-opening, that like, okay, like I can treat this more like a business. I don't have to treat it like a job. And I also have to give like so much credit to my clients. They're so amazing that, everyone just sort of was very receptive to the situation, open arms.
Do you think you did lose any deals because of,
If I
having a
did, then I
baby?
don't know about it.
Okay.
And
Because I remember
so-
getting a message from a client where they were like, oh, I knew you were having a baby, so like I didn't want to
didn't
bother
bother
you.
you.
And I was kind of like,
yeah.
okay, it's kind of the time where we need the most support, but
Yeah, you know what? If I did, then I either have blocked it out
yeah,
because there's also a lot I don't remember from that year. So I've either blocked it out of my memory entirely, or if they didn't approach me, then I guess I never knew. I think I had gone into it accepting that there would be some level of attrition, just because like I assumed that if people were like, well, if I can't have Cynthia, then I'll like, there's 10 other realtors I could use that I have a relationship with. I'm just going to go use that other person. And that's where I really felt so much gratitude towards my clients, because I sort of explained to people, hey, look, this is something we're doing. This is my
Did you like
associate.
send out a mass email? Like, how did you
No,
tackle that? Like, how did you let them know?
For people that I was actively working with leading up to it, I sort of explained the situation. I did a very warm handoff. Like, this is my replacement. I have full trust in this person. They're going to be managing my business. Like, I am available if you need me, but I am not physically leaving the house. Like, this person's going to be like, I used to make a joke because it was a male colleague. I was like, just picture him with braids, and that's me for this year. So,
wow, I love that you like took a stand and did that,
yeah.
But were you able, even though you...
It was
you
scary. It was scary. And like I said, I think I had to accept that I was going to lose some people but it was sort of a non-negotiable point for us.
I feel like this is the Oscars too, where you could be like, I'd like to thank not the Academy, but my clients.
Yeah. No, honestly,
it sounds like you have an amazing client base.
They were so understanding, like, and it just, I can't thank them enough.
Wow.
Because like everyone, and even to this day, like sort of creating boundaries around, now that you have a family, what's sacred family time, what's work time, and making sure, like, not necessarily creating boundaries with the clients, but creating boundaries for myself. Like, what is a non-negotiable time for me? When am I not picking up the phone?
Yeah.
When am I meeting clients? I made a choice that weekends are coveted time. Like, I don't really go out on weekends. And so sometimes that can be a hard conversation for clients, being like, look, like, I'll always make sure that I have someone to cover you. I'm not going to like leave you for 2 days.
Right.
Like, I'll make sure that you're seeing that house, or I'll make sure your open house is done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm never going to take away from the quality that I offer my clients, but the concept of leverage, where it's like, well, it doesn't have to necessarily be me doing it.
And I think that's huge that you just touched on that, because so many realtors, they think it has to be me, right? Like, I hear it all the time. And I started my team in 2017, and the first part of my business that I sort of outsourced or leveraged was the buyer side. And, I think a lot of agents, they just don't wrap their head around the fact that, you can train someone else, or you can set that the bar quite high with whoever the replacement is, to have a bigger business, to have more time back, freedom, right? So you don't normally, let's say you're not out on weekends, you're with your family.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's going to always be extenuating circumstances,
Of course.
right? And I think the type of market we're in will dictate a lot about like what has to happen. It's
been a good time to have
It's been a slower year for the market. So, I mean, it's been easier to facilitate things like that. But I also think that it's important for us as a family, and like, I don't want to miss that time too. I'm not going to get this time back with them, right? And so I have the rest of my life to work, to make money. Like,
100%.
I won't ever have that with them. So I do try, like, I mean, like I said, there's always extenuating circumstances, and I'll never leave anybody stranded.
Of course.
Like, I'll always make sure that
Yeah.
it'll get done.
No doubt. I
one
don't
way
even
or
know you that
another.
well. And I'm like, I know I'm good with her. in her
Yeah, like it's
hands.
gonna get done.
Yeah, for sure.
But in the same token, it's like I need to decide, like, what's that sacred time. So like we try to do like dinner time to bedtime. Like, we try to make sure both of us are there as much as possible for both dinner and bedtime. I mean, we also have 3 and they're young. So it's like
Yes.
one person handling
You're
3
outnumbered.
bedtimes is tricky. So even for each other, my partner and I, like, we try not to leave each other stranded if we don't have to, right?
So crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. People that don't have kids, I think until you are in that situation, it's really hard to picture or understand.
Oh yeah. And
You
with
know,
twins,
that's
if you don't have
like-
twins, you don't know. Like,
No,
honest to God, it's
I mean,
like it's tough. It's really
when
hard.
I saw you had twins on Facebook or wherever I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's intense.
Yeah.
That's wild. So, being a mom, like it changed your business obviously too, right? Like how do you, like, let's say mind share, right? Like your 100% mind share was going to real estate and now it's like, how do you divide that? Cause I find
Yeah.
it's really struggling.
I think in many ways it cut out a lot of inefficiencies because you have such a limited amount of time now. So it's like
People don't get
you got to get your work done. And so it's really forced me to try to focus more on systems.
Do you time block?
I do. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost to like a neurotic time block to the 15-minute kind of sometimes. But honest God, it's the only way to get everything done in a day. And I am trying to ask for help more, like even on the personal side, because like you really can't do it all. It's too much.
You might want to.
Yeah.
I want to do it all and more, but there's only so many hours in the day.
There's only so much. And so I think it's also like understand like what can I let go to? Like what's not really that important.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when it comes to work, just making sure that like, I'm as efficient as possible and just not more on the ball. I was always on the ball, but I feel like you have to be like more on the ball now. So I also have to write everything down. We were talking about lists. Like if it doesn't get written down, like it's gone.
Well, there's just too many things, right? So lists are huge. Like to-do lists, I'm just like, I have personal ones, work ones, and then extra on top of that.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can relate, especially being a mom of 3 kids. So
yeah, absolutely.
do you want your kids to grow up and be realtors one day?
I don't know. I mean, that's a tough question, right? I mean, on one hand, when I got into it, I could never have imagined that this was sort of like the trajectory it would go in. So like on one hand, like there's a lot of things I love about it. I love being able to go on it's funny. I was going to say go on vacation wherever you want, but like you're pretty much working on vacation anyway. But like
know,
that's another boundary to set. Like is like, no, I'm actually going on vacation. I'm not taking calls. But no, like flexibility in that sense has been really, really good. I think I don't know if I want them to be in real estate per se, but I'd love for them to be an entrepreneur in some sense because it can be extremely rewarding. And I think it depends on their personalities, right? Like I think this business is suited for some people and it's not suited for others.
100%.
So, I mean, they're still too young for me to really know what they want. And I hope we shield them from it too, so that they don't like grow up being like, I know everything about I don't want them to know about my job, right? And so like if they end up wanting to do it, sure, like by all means, but if they don't, that's very much okay too.
Funny on my side, my daughter, she'll be 5 soon. And probably like earlier this year, I was like, what do you want to be? And she was like, I want to be a real estater. And she, seems to really like it.
Yeah.
And we were in Turkey on vacation. We did I don't know if you saw, we did like a virtual tour, a cave tour, her and I. So she seems to really like it. And slowly I'm like, to both my kids, I'm like, see that house? I'm like, that's a semi-detached. So it's one house cut in 2. And they're like, oh, semi-detached.
That's awesome.
Too funny, but we'll see. I just like you want them to do what makes them happy. And, if it's owning a business or working for someone, I mean, whatever makes them happy.
Also, like, who knows what the world's going to look like in 20 years, right?
Yes.
Like, what are jobs going to be? Like, it's just, it's almost like I'm like one day at a time still. Like, I'm just not even out of like, let's just like get a solid 8 hours of sleep first. And then I can like think about stuff like
Small
that.
goals.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. Honestly, I had a great time. It was great
My
getting to know
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, where can people find you if they're interested in learning more about you?
Sure. Yeah. I guess Instagram's probably a great place. The Tennessee Houses, or HennesseyRealestate.com. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for watching the show. Remember to comment, like, and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. And if you're listening for an audio version, head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Thank you.